The Lazarus Group is one of the most notorious hacking organizations linked to probably North Korea. Their reputation precedes them with a trail of high-profile cybercrimes that have left governments and corporations scrambled to keep up. Understanding their operations is crucial not just for cybersecurity experts, but for everyone who's ever clicked on a suspicious link or downloaded an unverified application. To help me make sense of it all, I've invited one of the most respected voices of Russian cybersecurity, Evgeny Ivchenko. Evgeny is a security analyst, an educator, and the creator of YouTube blog Zero Daily. Evgeny, how are you doing?
Hi, Tim. Thank you for inviting me over to your show, and I'm doing great. How are you?
Yeah, doing great as well. My pleasure. On February 21st, 2025, ByBit, one of the biggest crypto exchange, was hit by the largest crypto case in history. Over 4,000 Ethereum was stolen, worth nearly $1.5 billion. Investigators say Lazarus Group used the advanced manipulation of a cold wallet protocols and laundered funds through decentralized exchanges and mixed it in less than 48 hours. It wasn't just fast, it was surgical, highly coordinated, and left barely a trace in traditional logs. What does this attack tell us about the current technical level of Lazarus Group? And what do you think? How far ahead compared to stand security practices?
At the very least, I can say that it tells us that they are getting better over time, which is actually not so good news for every one of us. Because if we take almost any country that is engaged into what is called like a cyber war, and we can name some like China, United States, the United Kingdom, Iran, or Russia, or North Korea. Every one of those countries, it has militarized hacking, I would say, groups or even branches of their intelligence or military. But so far, it looks like North Korea is the only one that don't even try to distinguish their activities as something being like legitimate, hitting some strategic targets. No, their main goal, and as they have proven over time, like they are motivated by two things. First would be finance. So it's a financial goal. They want to score as much money as they can. And the second is more a political goal. And if we were talking about hacks that were politically motivated, we can, of course, remember the Sony Pictures hack that happened soon after Sony refused to cancel the movie that was making fun of the Kim Jong Un. So they are evolving, and now they are capable of operations that include very sophisticated human intelligence and human operations, covered like employees and agents that they manage to either turn inside the organization, or they create a whole legend for some of their operatives who can later get employed into companies. And actually, there is quite a big list of companies that researchers found out that Lazarus Group particularly targets and constantly tries to plant their employees there.
Вот он включается. Прости, пожалуйста.
Да?
У меня включился этот робот-пылесос. Я выключил уже.
А, я понял. Ну ничего, мы просто потом уже порежем.
Да-да-да-да.
So researchers name really a big list of companies that Lazarus Group targets in terms of their attempts to constantly plant their agents into these companies as employees. And here is like the top of the list: Stripe, Coinbase, Binance, Block, Ripple, Robinhood, Tether, Circle, Kraken, Chainalysis. So they even targets for companies like Chainalysis, Cypherblade, or any other companies that do AML checks. And that's quite understandable because partly their operations are heavily reliant on how efficient AML practices are. And after that in place, you may remember that it even disrupted some major banking activities in some countries, like, for example, in Kazakhstan. A lot of people got their bank accounts frozen for 2 or 3 weeks. I was, for example, among those people. My friends' bank accounts were temporarily frozen in Thailand. So there was a lot of operations that were, as you mentioned, heavily reliant on DEX exchanges, because it is clear that right now Lazarus and other North Korean state-affiliated hackers, they shifted from using Tornado Cash or Blender or some decentralized protocols like Whirlpool or CoinJoin in Wasabi wallet. They moved from that to decentralized exchanges where they are moving funds back and forth from different wallets. They use bridges to switch from one blockchain to another. Because basically, because of all the years of cybercrime and money laundering operations that involved certain zero knowledge rollups like Tornado Cash or others, they became very, I would say, red flaggish in terms of AML. So now they are switching to other opportunities. And like basically, for example, it is understandable that if you unload a huge amount of Ethereum at some DEX pair, an automated market maker, you will naturally get a huge slippage. You will greatly affect the price. But it's not a problem for you if you have your own wallets meeting you on the other side of said exchange. And they did it a lot of times. Yeah, of course, they lost some of the funds just because of the slippage and because of the price fluctuations caused, I would say, rapid outflux of certain funds from DEXs. But still, we don't know if they were or weren't actual people who profited from the following arbitrage. So they later bought the same Ethereum using other wallets because they knew that they are moving volumes and traded it at some centralized exchanges, like the same ByBit or something else.
In cybersecurity point of view, what's the real motivation behind the reactions now? Is it ideological, financial, or something even more complex?
It's hard to say because we can only judge from the outcomes of their actions. But so far, if we are taking last decade, I would say it is mostly financial, because creating an army of hackers and the rise and maturing of Lazarus Group is like a main project, I would say, a flagship project of Kim Jong-un. Because before he came to power, North Korean hackers were like small time, not very organized, not very well funded, I guess. But when Kim Jong Un's reign started, they really started to evolve quite rapidly. So basically, for a country that is so heavily sanctioned, the North Korea, hacking activities is almost the best possible course they can take if they want to stay the same course but still score a big sums of money. Because their position, I guess, is, so what are you going to do to us? Like, you already sanctioned us, you already refused to sell anything or engage in any business, but we're not going anywhere and we have a nuke. So you will just have to accept that we are here and that we are doing what we are doing. So in terms of like, I I don't think that North Korean hackers or Lazarus Group in particular are like the most dangerous or most capable hackers out there in the world. But they are so far most, I would say, like wildcard hackers. So they basically do whatever they want and they don't care much about the repercussions or any outcomes. So right now, basically, who are allies to North Korea? Like Chinese, with whom they have a little cooling of relationship, and Russia, obviously. And basically that's it. And that leaves all other world as a target. I was going to say like a legitimate target, but it's obviously not legitimate. But in their perception, I guess, all other world is a fair game for them. So yeah, there you have it. You have a rogue state with a very capable hacking workforce who are determined on stealing money. So it keeps all the financial and crypto world on their toes. So it's not a time to relax in terms of cybersecurity.
So back in 2017, you remember WannaCry attack? I believe it showed how devastating Lazarus can be when they get access to top tier exploits like NSA, Eternal Blue. Within days, they affected hundreds, I believe, or even thousands of systems, affecting hospitals, banks, a lot of infrastructure objects across the world in more than 150 countries. That kind of reach and speed is like not something we see every day, especially from just one group. How are they getting their hands on these exploits so quickly? And what actually allows them to scale their attacks to effectively worldwide?
If we are going a bit back and we will look at Eternal Blue you mentioned, or let's say, for example, Tor, the Onion router, American military and intelligence and NSA and their basically like their military and intelligence community, they can take credit for a lot of stuff in the world of cybersecurity, both like bad and good. Because they developed a lot of stuff, but they were not, they probably they maybe didn't understand to a certain extent that you cannot keep a thing like that very secretive when the networks are evolving and when you have a lot of people like, and it goes back for what, 70 years. Like, remember Manhattan Project and how exactly Russians got the nuke in the first place? There was a spy who stole the information. So yeah, those things, they do happen.
Or two, I
And
believe.
I'm not even sure that,
Rosenberg.
yeah, and I'm not even sure that North Koreans were the ones who actually hacked NSA and stole Eternal Blue from them. This is kind of unclear. Maybe it was some internal leak or whatever. But if we're if we're getting back to the modern days, to 2025, basically right now you have a lot of ransomware as a service campaigns out there. Some, for example, Quillian or Redline or many others. So basically there are, I would say, maybe dozens of highly sophisticated, very motivated, and very trained software engineer teams, or I should say maybe malware engineer, who operate as a corporate structure inside of them, and they do their illegal business as a business. So basically, they have websites, sometimes even in ClearNet, sometimes in Tor, where they just sell their ransomware using a subscription model. And basically, any person who has the knowledge about the darknet forums that they operate on, and they are not so hard to find, they can buy a subscription of certain tier. And the top tiers always include, you get access to all the juicy stuff, you have your own command and control infrastructure, and this and that. So right now, they don't even have to invest resources. Not they are not doing that. Of course they do. But there is a lot of stuff right now that you can just buy off the hands of researchers. And again, there we have the bug bounty programs, of course, but we also have exploit bounty programs, I would say. So basically, NSO Group that was involved in this Pegasus scandal, allegedly, they were prepared to pay up to $1 million for 0-day, zero-click attack exploit for Android and 1.5 mil for the same for Apple for a proof of concept for a working zero-day exploit. But North Koreans, they have a lot of cheese right now, and they can offer same bounties or even higher to the exploit developers. And the exploit developer might not even know who he is selling to these exploits. So right now, it's almost a matured market, I would say, in terms of exploits, data. They just have some added risks. Take breach forms for one. It reemerges, so they tear it down. Sometime later, it pops up again on the different domain, and the show goes on. Same goes for the ransomware. So take, for example, Redline malware. Recently, FBI with Interpol and a lot of law enforcement agencies from Europe, they managed to decimate their infrastructure. They seized a lot of servers. They basically destroyed their command and control infrastructure. But hey, they still have the source code. They just need to rebuild the infrastructure, which is, I would say, much easier when you have the product and you have the team, and the team is still there. It's not like someone grabbed the guys and put them in jail. No, they are still out there. And all they have to do is rebrand and start selling again. That basically means that these big hacking collectives that are funded by countries, they will continue to get their hands on the most sophisticated cyber weapons, I would say. So, because for one, if we are talking like command and control, like you have the state of the art Cobalt Strike, and yes, it's not very easy to buy it, but I can tell you that it's much easier to buy Cobalt Strike than to put a person to the ByBit or Binance to plant a person there. And they managed to pull this off. They continue to manage to pull this off sometimes. Any stuff that can be sold and bought, they will probably find a way to buy it. So it's all about how we can defend ourselves against that. And that basically means investing time and effort and money, of course, into our own cybersecurity.
Yeah, as I'm aware, one of their like latest strategies was embedding malicious code into a crypto trading app used by developers, which gave them access to internal systems of various DeFi companies. This happens despite those firms claiming to be secure and decentralized. It probably shows that decentralization doesn't automatically mean immunity to intrusion. So, what are the biggest blind spots, in your opinion, that crypto teams still have when it comes to Lazarus? And what should they do? What should they be doing definitely differently?
I would say that any company that has a legitimate fear of Lazarus operatives infiltrating said companies, they have to think very hard on their screening, interviews, and background checks and due diligence when they are hiring, especially when they are hiring some people who are remote. Because right now, deepfake, it can be so good that they won't even look like people from Korea. They might even appear like a person of any other race on during the calls. And we know that it is not impossible to teach people to speak English like Westerners do or some other people do. So basically, I understand that companies, they are basically not equipped and they lack investigative power and they lack reach and resources to do the checks. I'm guessing that maybe sometime in the future, if this threat is really recognized, we would see some maybe some state controlled and state endorsed way for government agencies to be able to do the same due diligence checks for big companies, for example. Because why not? Because, for example, if we take US to work in some certain fields, you have to have a security clearance. And unless you have a security clearance, you can't work with critical infrastructure. You can't work in cybersecurity in terms of like whenever the state is your employer or they are the client. So electrical grids, critical infrastructure, military, of course, intelligence. For all of that, you need that security clearance. But maybe they should scale it down and to have some more type of clearance for different companies, like financial clearance, for example, so that some companies or some government agencies, I would say, It may be even like some collaborative force under the Interpol or Europol or whatever could do some background checks, for example, just to verify that the person exists. Because then again, if we are talking state-endorsed actors, they have enough power and they have enough resources to have cover identities who are their agents. So basically, right now, like I have something to compare it with. For example, South American drug cartels, they are infiltrating major shipping companies that own big ships. And sometimes you would have a ship which crew is 100% cartel owned. So these are people that they manage to plant inside the company. And they smuggle drugs and do other smuggling operations. And right now, ports, they just don't have enough manpower and equipment to screen all the containers. And the companies, when situations like that surface and they are getting known, they get some press attention, the companies, they answer quite honestly, like, guys, we're not equipped to deal with cartels. We're a civic company. We're just a business. We don't have police databases and this and that. And that's a good thing. They shouldn't have them. But at the same time, we have to think from the overall security standpoint that maybe at some point we should have that. Because right now, like there is no good outcome for that. And it will certainly piss off people who are thinking about staying anonymous and like owning their own data and revoking the access to their data. But let's be honest about that. Our data is out there. You may be able to leverage GDPR to make some website erase all your logs, cookies, or your private data that was there. But how are you going to, I would say, persuade some data hoarders in the dark web who have petabytes of data? They have trillions of lines of stolen databases. How do you manage to make them delete your personal data? That's just impossible.
Yeah, actually, most of our viewers are in cybersecurity pros, and they're probably builders, investors, and some just crypto people or just everyday users trying to stay safe in the Web3 world. And if we face it, yeah, most of us click on the things we probably shouldn't, or reuse passwords across various platforms. If you have to give just one concrete piece of advice to protect against Lazarus style attacks for individuals, something anyone could use and follow. So, what would it be?
Well, the easiest would be start using unique passwords. And like that basically means start using some password manager, but please do, really. It doesn't matter which one. There is a lot of like arguing about which are better. I personally prefer decentralized like KeePassXC, and I don't really fancy centralized password managers like 1Password or something like this. But if having your own instance on your own machine is too much trouble for you, okay, use the centralized. It's better than having a similar password for a lot of websites and for a lot of stuff that you have.
So, what kind of risks the Lazarus attacks and AK Lazarus attacks can bring to the regular crypto people? Because it seems that some infrastructure, some big products, some big to fail companies are or should protect their infrastructure. But what about regular people? Why should I keep my cybersecurity vision aware?
That basically depends of your net worth, because I don't think that Lazarus right now engages in widespread malware, non-targeted campaigns. So they mostly focus on really big targets. They do spear phishing and they do targeted attacks against people for, again, like regarding whom they can have some level of certainty that these people, they have sizable amount of crypto. So I guess you scale from what you stand to lose. If all your crypto portfolio is like 3 or 4 digits you keep on your Telegram wallet, then you don't have to worry about Lazarus. You have to worry about some script kiddies or people who will send you all this stupid stuff. Hey guys, I have these trading manuals. Do you want some? I can send them to you free. Yeah, but if you if you have sizable amount of crypto, or if out there is information that suggests you have a sizable amount of crypto, like even if you are faking that, you might be a target. Because when you have the manpower, and I have no doubts that Lazarus have some manpower, who says that they are not conducting research regarding databases and people and individuals who can be targeted? Because remember the last notorious Lazarus hack that resulted in over 3,000 Bitcoins stolen? And initially people thought that this was some exchange or something like that, but no, this was just some elderly guy from the United States. So like this really is an eye opener. It's out there to teach people a lesson that you don't have to be paranoid, but you have to protect your own assets in one way or another.
Thank you, Evgeny. That was Evgeny Ivchenko from Zero Daily Podcast. We will keep the link for Evgeny's podcast back in the comments. And do not hesitate to ask any questions for Evgeny. So we will invite him to be hosted by us again. Thank you, subscribe, and see you in the next one.
Thank you, Tim. Take care.